Cash and Genti, between yards and yards before contact and yards after contact, all these sorts of, they're giving him nothing. He is getting hit constantly behind the line of scrimmage, multiple yards behind the line of scrimmage, and frankly, at this point, I think he's essentially out of the race, and this is partly due to Emeka Egbuka having a great year, Tyler Warren putting up big numbers, Tet McMillan, I think, is maybe the most talented player overall in the rookie class.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The leader right now in the clubhouse in the odds market is Fernando Mendoza. College football purists, yep, absolutely know that guy. Fantastic. He's a great quarterback. Non-purists who are tuning in just for the biggest games, who is this guy, Joe, and how did he get here?
Well, he came from Cal. He's a mobile kid. He's big. He's about 6'3", about 220. He's a gutty kid and had a great performance for Kirk Cignetti.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
We're in a weird place with Trevor Lawrence. This was another one of these quote-unquote can't-miss generational quarterback prospects, right? Everybody was salivating over when he was a freshman winning national championships. And here we are, about 5 years later, looking at ourselves going, is it just time for Trevor Lawrence to get a change of venue or something? Like, what's got to give here? Hopefully this Liam Cohen offense starts to come together.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Is a lockout looming for the WNBA? Plus, the Ryder Cup draws its worst ratings this century. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today from FOS Studios in New York City. I'm Baker Machado.
And I'm Renee Washington, and thanks so much for joining us as each and every weekday we are chatting the biggest stories in the business and culture of sports. We also have the latest on YouTube TV and NBC's last-minute carriage deal. But first, let's dive into the headlines in the shoot-around.
Yeah, Renee, and a lot of big WNBA news to get to, including Nafisa Collier's statement and the commissioner's future. We're going to get to that later. But first, the WNBA finals are set as the Las Vegas Aces punch their ticket for the third time in 4 seasons. That after a wild overtime win over the Indiana Fever. The Aces will host Game 1 against the Phoenix Mercury on Friday. This is the league also announced a new media deal with USA Network. This will now see the cable channel air at least 50 WNBA games next season, including, Renee, the playoffs and finals in select years.
Yeah, it's been a very busy 24 hours for the WNBA. As you mentioned, Nafisa Collier's comments, which we'll get to, but also after just 1 season, the Dallas Wings have fired their head coach. They now haven't had a head coach for more than 2 years since 2018's firing of Fred Williams. So it's the 5th head coach vacancy across the league. We also saw the USA Network news. So now we're going to get WNBA primetime action Wednesday, some double headers. They'll have studio shows, and it'll just allow for at least 50 games to be at USA Network where you can watch them. But then for the WNBA finals to be set, overtime in a Game 5 being the determining factor, it's just very much fitting for the day that we saw, because MVP Asia Wilson and the Aces looking, as you mentioned, for their 3rd title, and then the Phoenix Mercury looking for their 1st since winning back in 2014. So sets us up for a very thrilling 7-game series for the WNBA finals.
Oh, yes. You're thinking 7 already. I love that. All right, let's move to the NBA, where the ongoing contract standoff between Jonathan Kuminga and the Golden State Warriors ended with the restricted free agent signing a new 2-year, $48.5 million deal to stay with the team. Now, this comes as The Athletic says both the Kings and the Suns had offers out to the 2021 first-round pick. Meanwhile, head coach Steve Kerr now becomes the next big free agent for the Warriors, as he told reporters he does not plan to negotiate a new contract during the season. Now, we should note his current deal expires at the end of this one, Renee.
The Warriors become the new OGs across the NBA. We saw, you mentioned 2021, it was back then that the Lakers attempted to have their big four with Carmelo Anthony, Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. We've seen recently the Clippers with Chris Paul, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Bradley Beal. And now, as the Clippers had a 33-year age as their average of the team, the Warriors are pushing that and probably raising that number because they also added in Al Horford.
Yes.
They've added in DeAnthony Melton. Seth Curry, who gets to play with Steph Curry for the first time ever in their professional career. So I'm excited for that. Del Curry, Amazon Prime broadcast them. But it just makes for the Warriors a chance to lock in some other pieces, including Kuminga. And as you mentioned, with that $48.5 million deal, he does get a second-year option as well on that.
All right, let's move to golf. After the U.S.'s comeback bid fell short against the Europeans and a torrent of fan abuse directed at golfers and their families, last weekend's Ryder Cup coverage on NBC and Peacock produced the least watched event in 25 years, as Sunday's coverage averaged only 3.2 million viewers here in the U.S. Yet viewership, Renee, in the UK was significantly higher. Sky Sports says over 5 million people tuned in to watch Team Europe win. That is a 45% increase from 2023's event. So clearly everybody wanted to watch the winners on this one.
Absolutely. And over in the UK for Sky Sports, they mentioned this was the most watched weekend they've had in history with 8.8 million viewers. And of course, Ryder Cup was a big part of that. But it passed Rory McIlroy winning the Masters back in April. It passed their previous highs for the Ryder Cup. So they're seeing all positive trending direction. Whereas for the U.S., it seems like the fans, the commercial breaks, and a lot of other factors weighed into that massive decrease.
All right, well, just days after the Lynx were bounced from the playoffs and her coach, Cheryl Reeve, was issued the largest fine in league history for criticizing officials, Nafisa Collier used her exit interview with the press to torch the league and Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. She said, quote, "We have the best players in the world, we have the best fans in the world, but right now we have the worst leadership in the world. This is the league's current collective bargaining deal with players expires at the end of October." So let's take a look at this in today's main event. All right, let's bring in front office sports, women's sports reporter Annie Constable. So I know there's a lot of layers to this. Let's just start off at the top. Why did Nafisa Collier release this statement?
I mean, I think when you hover above her statement and think about the entire statement as a whole, it really led me to believe that there were a multitude of issues that led to this moment being the right moment to release this statement. She obviously talked about officiating. She talked about leadership in the league. She talked about the CBA negotiations, and she also talked about a private conversation that she had with Commissioner Kathy Engelbert during Unrivaled. And so to me, the catalyst may have been this moment in the semifinals, her coach being fined $15,000, while also this issue of officiating not really being addressed. That may have been the catalyst. But clearly from her statement, what we can gather is that there are multiple issues at hand that need to be addressed, and she addressed them.
Yeah, and as she started and mentioned multiple times throughout that statement, it's not about wins or losses. It's not about the Minnesota Lynx having their season come to an end. It's not even about that moment. And as you touched on with the conversation she had with Kathy Engelbert, that conversation with the commissioner was back during Unrivaled in the off-season for the WNBA. So to clarify for people that might be confused, she continuously reiterated that point. But one of those points that was brought up was about the players, as her conversation with Commissioner Kathy Engelbert alluded to, the players almost needing the WNBA and talking about how the WNBA helps to market them, players like Caitlin Clark, players like Angel Reese. What were your thoughts on those types of comments that she shared from a private conversation that Nafisa had with Kathy Engelbert?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nafisa is strategic, right? She obviously has this experience in boardrooms as a co-founder of Unrivaled, and she knows exactly what she's doing. She also has a very lengthy family history of advocacy and speaking on issues and fighting for things such as this. So I think when you consider her statement, it's very calculated, and she understands the magnitude of the moment. And so when you consider that private conversation, what was interesting to me was learning that Kathy said how much these players are reliant on the WNBA, because anybody that's covered the WNBA or been in the WNBA for more than just the last 2 years are very aware of how many missteps the WNBA has made in terms of marketing their players, in terms of getting their players out in a considerable way and maximizing their value. So to hear that statement from Commissioner Engelbert in communication with Nafisa Collier was really, a pinpoint for me. I was quite shocked by that.
Obviously, Nafisa Collier, one of the co-founders of Unrivaled, which goes on during the WNBA off-season, is part of a string of all of this as well. given the fact that Nafisa Collier has made it a point to say that this is a league that prides itself on player relationships, they get paid way better, all of this, they have a great media deal, all of this. Does Unrivaled ever have is that ever an existential threat at all to the WNBA? And is that ever a reason that maybe the WNBA should be concerned about Unrivaled, especially given the fact that Nafisa Collier issued these statements yesterday?
Yeah, I think that's a layered question because obviously no one's going to come out from the WNBA and say, hey, we think Unrivaled is a threat. But based on the way that they've operated, I mean, the president of Unrivaled, Alex, spoke to me directly about their outreach to the WNBA as far as investment goes. And the W wasn't interested in investing. And if you look at Unrivaled, we can see that WNBA and NBA owners are not part of the investors group in Unrivaled. And so that's something that leads you to believe that this could potentially be seen as a threat as far as the WNBA considers it. Now, whether or not it legitimately is, remains to be seen because this is a startup league. It's only entering its second season. I mean, if you're thinking about what it's up against in terms of the W and its longevity, that's a lot of ground to make up. So we got to be realistic about that thought as well.
Yeah, definitely a lot of factors that were brought out of that conversation around officiating, around leadership, around looking at specific conversations you mentioned regarding the players and how they're marketed. But it now also just leads us to bigger questions around the future of the league.
Yeah, and coming up, we're going to get straight into that. What does the future hold for the WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelberg? And are we actually going to be hitting a lockout as the CBA countdown looms? And he's going to join us for that conversation when we return.
Now let's get to a player who was taken in the first round of every fantasy football draft, and thus far, has produced the least points, George. I mean, I thought you'd just take a rookie running back in the first round and you get yourself 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. But Boise State's Ashton Jeanty for the Las Vegas Raiders, we got out of excuses, right? Like at this point, it's, they got to give him the ball more, they got to do this, they got to do that. I mean, George, does this guy look like Barry Sanders? Like, that was the comparisons? Like, I haven't seen any of that yet.
Our panicometer, all right, doesn't go high enough here. All right, because this is, come on, we're freaking out here. I don't think it's all Jeanty, by the way. He has more yards after contact than before contact. That pretty much lets you know what the problem is there. All right, the Raiders needed a running back, sure, but they need an offensive line. All right, they need a couple of offensive linemen. It's not something you can fix in one off season here. So yeah, we're gonna eat it with Jeanty. He's not gonna be worth the first round pick in fantasy. It's just not this year. In future years we'll see here, but not this year. The offensive line is not very good. The defense is not very good, so they have to throw the ball more in the second mix. They're trailing every game, so that's hurting us as well here. So like I said, the panicometer. It doesn't go high enough for this. Okay, I am more than concerned. I am not calm. I am critical. I am flipping out.
Isn't there going to be a time where he just breaks it free, George? Like what you said is not false, but I think there's a point being missed here. Why has he not broken free one time the whole season? Not once to just run away. Like he's Devin Singletary right now. No offense to Devin Singletary, but that's who he is.
Fantasy Sports Today. Fridays starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington and Baker Machado. Well, the WNBA is entering in a crucial next month. That is, the current collective bargaining agreement expires at the end of October, with players saying that there has been no progress on a new deal. So let's bring back our women's sports reporter, Annie Costabile. So, Annie, obviously, we'll get to the collective bargaining agreement here in a second, but I'm going to start with Commissioner Kathy Engelberg. Of course, she was torched by Nafisa Collier in that statement that has led a lot of people to speculate about her future with the league. How much longer do you think she remains as the head of the league?
I mean, I think there's been a lot of discussion about her tenure and whether or not it would make sense for her to exit the WNBA following the ratification of a new CBA. I mean, in a lot of people's minds, the timing of that seems to make sense. So this information coming out regarding her tenure following Nafisa Collier's statement, you're starting to see the alignment in terms of, again, what has kind of been discussed in
So
private.
to be clear, you think that if a new CBA gets signed, Kathy Engelbert is out?
I think there are a lot of people who have spoken under that assumption that once a CBA is ratified, it would make sense that Commissioner Kathy Engelbert would step down.
Well, I'm curious if this puts even more pressure on, because in addition to Nafisa Collier calling out the officiating, saying that players and coaches don't have the freedom of speech to speak up against officiating because they're slapped with a fine, calling out leadership for their lack of how they've just been, I should just say, lack of professionalism and how they're running the league. She also did make claims about Kathy Engelbert's comments to her as a commissioner to a player, and Kathy Engelbert responded with a statement saying she was disheartened by Nafisa's how she characterized her conversations, but did not directly negate or deny any of those comments. How much does this put more of a microscope on the WNBA having to make a change in leadership? Leadership's been questioned, but then your leadership also did not even deny any of these really eye-opening claims.
Yeah, I mean, as we all know in journalism, if something's wrong, it gets denied. If there's inaccuracies, it gets denied. And so we clearly didn't see that from Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. What I found interesting was in a recent article that talked about her tenure and whether or not she'll remain as commissioner. The league came out and called this categorically false. So the timing of her exit from the WNBA remains to be seen. What we know is the players have for a long time been vocal about their disconnection with Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. And I think we're seeing that come to a head in a way that could indicate that her tenure with the WNBA is coming to an end.
Well, so just on the collective bargaining side, now that we're now going to be fraught in negotiations for the next month to avoid a labor stoppage, is Nafisa Collier's statement that she gave sort of the first part of the negotiating where the players are saying, this is our stance on all of this, and now all of a sudden it's leading likely to a potential labor shortage because they've been so far apart on negotiations, and this is where the players are standing on this?
Yeah, so even to go back to the first part of our discussion in terms of Nafisa Collier's statement being a response to their early exit from the playoffs, this, again, is layered, and she's here talking about the CBA negotiations and how far apart that they stand. And so this statement to me definitely read as players being fed up with the separation between both sides as far as these negotiations go. I know that both sides continue to meet. I was told that there is a meeting coming up on October 9th, and there's 4 weeks that remain between now and that October 31st deadline. And we also know that there are options that don't necessarily mean that a lockout is required or that a work stoppage is required. They could very easily decide to extend negotiations as we've seen them do in the past. But what we know right now is there is clear separation between both sides when it comes to revenue, increased salaries, specifically that revenue sharing model. And so those are big topics to be at odds in discussions regarding, especially with 4 weeks, remaining before a new CBA would need to be ratified.
Yeah, and in Nafisa Collier's comments, some of the quotes that jumped out at me, saying things that Commissioner Kathy Engelbert allegedly mentioned, Caitlin Clark should be grateful for the WNBA giving her more, giving her the platform that she would not have without the WNBA. Actually saying we have the best players in the world, we have the best fans in the world, but we have the worst leadership in the world. And even mentioning we go to battle every day to protect the shield for a league that doesn't value us. This feels bigger than the CBA to me, Annie. Is this possibly going to be able to blow up to a point that it impacts the future of the WNBA as a whole, that this league in general could be in jeopardy?
I think as far as the entire league being in jeopardy, a lot of that hinges upon the momentum that we've seen built up until this point. And it's culminating with these CBA negotiations. And I think when you consider the momentum and a business like the WNBA's, it is a sticking point to consider if a work stoppage happens, how that will impact the league as a whole. Again, going back to that statement as far as players being grateful for the platform given, when you consider Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, these are three players who have succeeded in spite of the hurdles placed in front of women, specifically in women's sports. These are players who have succeeded because of their own brand development and because of social media. We've talked about this at length, about how social media has changed the women's sports landscape, because these players have, again, built these brands in spite of the institutions that have tried to hold them back. So for her to say that, I think it's not only inaccurate, but it points to so many of the reasons why players are feeling the way they are about her.
Especially in an NIL environment where people like Caitlin Clark signed a lot of their endorsement deals before they even got into the WNBA.
Right, that are bigger than their salaries.
Exactly, which is why I thought that statement, if Kathy Engelbert actually said that, is absolutely crazy.
And I think that statement, again, not to kind of beat this to a pulp, but that statement says more about where the league's been in terms of its investment and its lack of investment in putting players in the position to expand their brands. The league has largely struggled at that. Anybody that's covered this league or been around this league knows that. And that's what that statement indicated to me, was that the league has actually failed its players in terms of the platform it's given them.
Very busy month of October for you, Annie Constable. Thank you so much. Coming up next on Front Office Sports Today, YouTube and NBC come to a last-minute deal, but not so lucky for fans in D.C. We'll explain next.
Well, Shadur, which quarterbacks are you talking about? Because there's some bad quarterback play out there, but the dude who can't beat Dylan Gabriel out for a job and can't beat Joe Flacco out for a job certainly can't lay claim to being better than any other quarterback in the league.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
That's a lot for a closer. 10. That's you're not a closer anymore if you blow 10 games. I mean, my goodness. That's
he's mentally broken too. Like, it's to the point where, like, Dodger fans aren't even mad at him; they're more mad at the Dodgers for putting him out there.
Putting him in.
Right? It's more so.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, guys, like, he's done.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Major League Baseball has decided it is time to put balls and strikes not just in the hands of the umpires, but also the robot umpires, as they say. The ABS system is now officially in place starting next season. Now, keep in mind, they're not just throwing this out there. They have used this at the Arizona Fall League, and they've also used it at different levels of the minor leagues as well.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Everything changed at that point. They went and got Jonquel Jones, and they really had that triple threat monster team. That second year they lost in the WNBA Finals, 3-1 against the Las Vegas Aces. Year 3, they finally get over the top hump. You can question whether they should have won the title with that foul call late in Game 5 that sent Breanna Stewart to the foul line.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington and Baker Machado. Well, as their current deal was about to expire, NBC and YouTube TV reached a short-term extension that will keep NBC content on the streaming platform. This after YouTube TV just went through a similar situation with Fox just a few weeks ago. So for that and so much more, let's bring in Info West reporter Eric Fisher. So Eric, let's talk about how this deal got across the finish line, and basically at the 11th hour, but it doesn't seem like it's a done deal for an extended period of time.
No, this is a lot of like what we see in many of these other distribution fights where they just agreed, let's just keep the lights on and we'll keep talking, that there's enough progress just to keep it going, and it just allows temperatures to cool while big college football comes on this weekend. We've got a Sunday night game in Buffalo, and those all continue on while the discussions continue.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we're in the midst of college football, Sunday night football. Of course, the NBA deal is getting started as well soon. Premier League, so many sports that will be impacted by this. What are those points that are keeping this deal from being finalized?
This is a straight monetary thing that programming costs continue to go up, and so NBC is looking to pass that on to the distributors. And for YouTube TV specifically, they're running up against, their costs continue to escalate what they're charging the consumer, and they were originally an alternative to traditional cable and satellite TV. As their costs to the consumer continue to go up, that difference in that alternative positioning continues to erode, and so it's very much a monetary fight right now.
So these discussions are, and these arguments and these negotiations are no different than the cable companies that had done these with Disney and NBC and all of them in the past, but the difference here is this is YouTube and not the cable companies. Are the
and they've grown to number 4 now.
Correct. But are the points of contention the same, and are the negotiating tactics different than how the cable companies used to do these negotiations?
The issues are the same. The tactics are different because in the other situations, that television distribution for all the companies at the table, that was and is their entire business. For YouTube and Google, this is only a tiny slice of the entire business. And yes, YouTube TV feeds into everything else, but if it goes away tomorrow, they're still a digital behemoth.
Yes.
Well, there, of course, as we heard before with the previous contract negotiations, a $10 credit has been brought up again that subscribers would get if a blackout were to occur. But subscribers aren't the only ones impacted. We also saw Monumental Sports down in D.C. issue a statement that YouTube TV, Hulu, and Live TV have dropped them as well. Monumental Sports, what's the impact there? But also, do we see this impacting others in some way?
Even worse, because I think that they're already dark on YouTube TV, and I think that blackout could go for a while because it's tough sledding right now for a lot of regional sports networks. And Yes Network here in New York, they're fighting it out with Comcast right now, although they're in the midst of another short-term extension. But a lot of these distributors are looking to tier or somehow get rid of regional sports networks that they feel like they're really expensive for the audiences that they deliver. Certainly the RSNs counter that. But they don't have the kind of scale and leverage that the national networks do, so they don't have as much marketplace power, and so it could be a tough situation in DC for a while. And there's a very good hockey team down there. Ovi's coming back, and you know, got at least one more season with him, and
Ovechkin,
they're not going to be able to see him.
Well, so what's the future then of the RSN model? I mean, there had been talk for a while that maybe they get folded into the ESPN flagship platform or something else, but what happens now to them?
You're seeing a lot more of that, and baseball's really kind of at the tip of the spear. We've already got a number of teams folding into this league model, and you know, we talked with Rob Manfred about this at Tuned In a couple of weeks ago, and that in-house centralized model for the local rights continues to grow and grow, and we're just seeing the Mariners just fold into that. Root Sports Northwest just folded, another very good team. We got Cal Raleigh, and they're going to be part of that league structure beginning next year as well. So I think we're going to see more and more of that going forward, where these teams sort of fold into a more league-centric, nationalized structure for their local rights.
Good stuff as always, Eric Fisher. Thank you so very much. And let's see what's bubbling over at the FOS water cooler. Well, Renee, as the Red Sox were able to steal Game 1 in their wild card series at Yankee Stadium, what made it all the more impressive, they did it in front of pretty much only Yankees fans, as the Yanks were only allowing those in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut the chance to buy tickets. The Yankees said they wanted to cut down on ticket scalpers and allow local fans easier access to tickets. They've been saying they've done this since 2018, but I feel like this is new, right? No?
No, it's not. It's crazy to me to think they would be fine with canceling and refunding any tickets that were outside of New Jersey, Connecticut, or Pennsylvania, but we have seen this a lot. I know in Philly this happens, whether it's the Sixers or the Phillies. We've seen that with playoff games. We've seen that with regular season games sometimes. So it's become a little bit more common than people realize, but it's just wild to openly have this be a known fact that if you you are buying your tickets outside of these areas, you can't come to the game. What if you're a Yankees fan that lives somewhere else and you want to fly into the playoffs?
And they said basically you'd have to go to one of those other ticket reseller sites out there to get it. But like now, the Yankees have been put on notice now for this. By the way,
the Red Sox have been dominant against the Yankees in the regular season. They've been dominant so far this wild card, and they could be closing out tonight.
That's very true. And we're going to have more of the baseball playoff wild card on tomorrow's show. We'll see you guys later.